Good afternoon, everyone. Josh's Severe Weather, and happy Wednesday to you. We are going to talk about Tropical Storm Debby and an increase in rain totals for some of us here in the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast. I'm also going to talk about what could be our next system to maybe threaten the United States here coming up in the next couple of weeks. Things are going to get a lot busier here. We are just getting started with a more active pattern. Now, Debby is not the only thing we're watching today. There are some waves expected to cross the southern Caribbean and enter the western and central Gulf next week. Right now, I'm not super excited about the potential for either of these to really become much of anything other than rainmakers, but we do need to keep an eye on them just to be safe. The area of maybe some greater concern will be moving out of Africa and approaching the Lesser Antilles around this time next week, next Tuesday, Wednesday. And that is the area that has at least a better signal for some development. We don't know exactly where that would develop, but if you are in the Caribbean or the Bahamas or on the East Coast or in Bermuda, then you definitely want to at least keep an eye on it for the time being. And that's not going to be the only one. Things will continue to stay active as we are in a much more favorable environment for multiple systems to form. Right now, the biggest concern is Debby. We've talked about it for over a week. Winds are up to 60 miles per hour. The system is drifting northeast. It will loop back and make landfall overnight tonight, early tomorrow morning on the South Carolina coast. After that, it becomes a major rainstorm and could produce severe weather on the eastern side as well. The other system to watch right now has got a very slight chance of developing, a 10% here. That is actually kind of tailed off a little bit as wind shear from Debby and the upper low to its east have been a little bit too strong for this system to gain any organization. It's got a small window, though, early next week to maybe become something in the southwestern Gulf, but probably not a threat to the U.S. I think at the very worst, we might get a last-second depression or storm like we saw with Tropical Storm Chris around the same time we were watching Hurricane Beryl. So not super concerned about that. In the Pacific, we're left with two systems that are running an Olympic race here to the Western Pacific. Actually, Emilia is probably going to take over Fabio and absorb it. The two are doing what's called a Fujiwara, where they're kind of pivoting around each other. The bigger of the two, Emilia, will likely absorb Fabio in a couple of days. And more importantly, not a threat to land. So the alarm has started to be sounded here for potential hazards in the next couple of weeks. This came out yesterday from the NOAA Weather Service and Climate Prediction Center. Global Tropics Hazards Outlook showing us areas that we need to be keeping a closer eye on. And next week, a slight chance for something to form in the Western Gulf, but the area of greater concern showing up here near the northern Lesser Antilles and tracking towards the Bahamas. And this entire area at least has the potential of seeing something. Behind that, there will be some potential for the Gulf, for the southeast, and for the Caribbean, but another system may follow it here the week of the 21st. So 40% or greater chances beyond a week is a very high chance if you think about statistically how this works out. So while we can't say with certainty yet what's going to form and how intense it'll be, we definitely see a couple of improving signals here in the next couple of weeks. So we're heading into a more active time, to say the least. Here's a look presently at where our tropical storm Debby, sorry, I forgot its name already, is located, and just doing a slight loop here off the coast. Now, a few days ago, some models had it out into here over the warmer Gulf Stream waters where it would develop into a hurricane. That is not going to be the case here, but we have, whoops, sorry about that. We have seen some, oh, I just lost my screen. There we go. All right. We're all professionals here, right? What we have seen is that the system is just not out over enough water to re-intensify. So not going to be a hurricane, but it is a strengthening tropical storm that is expected to make landfall here later tonight. You can see this timestamp puts it with a landfall around midnight between Charleston and Myrtle Beach, somewhere in Georgetown County, or maybe far northeastern Charleston County. As that system moves in, it's expected to weaken and is going to turn into a big rainstorm for the Piedmont region here of the Carolinas into central Virginia and western Virginia, and then head up into the northeast. It will be picking up speed, and that is good news. A few days ago, it looks like this was going to be lingering into the weekend. Now it looks like it's going to be picking up that speed and accelerating to the northeast and merging with a front, becoming post-tropical by Friday night. Very heavy rain heading up into New England, upstate New York, and Pennsylvania. I'm going to walk you through those totals here in a minute. And it's been a very wet summer, especially in places like Vermont, parts of upstate New York. We've been wet all week here in parts of the Northeast. So this is not what you want to see, but it is unfortunately going to be a big factor. Now, if you look at the satellite image here of Debby, the center is actually exposed with dry air making its way into Debby. And as a result, all of the heavier showers and storms are well to the east of the center. So unlikely that this core tries to reform between now and landfall in less than 12 hours. We also have an upper level low or mid-level low here that is tracking in the general direction, actually giving it a bit of a kick more to the north and west. So rather than stalling down in here for a couple more days, fortunately, it is going to start to pick up some speed and head up in this direction. So that is good news, but we still have a ton of moisture to deal with this system. Here's a look at the water vapor image, and you can see that dry air did infiltrate the center of the system, hollowing it out some, although it has begun to re-intensify slowly here this morning, and this afternoon winds are now up to 60 miles per hour. We also see a lot of moisture feeding in from the Bahamas and Cuba, and so this area over the next 24 hours will get crushed with heavy rain. That area eventually shifts more to the north and west into the Appalachian region and into the Piedmont areas of North Carolina, Virginia, and Maryland. So that's a look at the water vapor. Here is a closer look at the infrared satellite and very deep cloud tops here. This push of dry air does need to be watched because it could actually add to a more favorable tornadic environment in the next couple of days. But you can see here over the last few frames that the center is beginning to start to fill in a little bit more. So the Gulf Stream is working some magic on the system, but its challenge is that it is running out of time to strengthen much more. So we'll have a moderately strong tropical storm here that will weaken after landfall tomorrow morning and become a depression by tomorrow evening. And then we have to deal with a lingering amount of incredible amounts of rain for portions of the mid-Atlantic. So you can see the main concern right now is heavy rainfall in the Carolinas today and tonight, North Carolina especially tomorrow, and then spreading tomorrow afternoon and night up into Virginia, and merging with a front here and bringing more rainfall to western and northern parts of New England, Pennsylvania, New York State. Unfortunately, we've had a lot of rain in this area this year, and we are continuing to see this rain spreading northward. So a moderate risk for flash flooding in parts of the Northeast, and a high risk, 70% or greater, for eastern South Carolina and for a good portion of North Carolina. Here's a look at our storm surge forecast. 1 to 2 feet, Folly Beach to South Sandy River, 1 to 3 feet all the way to Ocracoke, and that also includes the sounds here. So we will have coastal flooding both in the outer banks and in the inner banks, as well as along the Carolina beaches. But you can see, fortunately today we have some clarity on where this system's going to go. Models are in much better agreement today that everything is going to eventually advance northward and accelerate and then turn northeast and merge with a front. So we're not expecting it to become a hurricane, but it may strengthen just a hair more up to about maybe 65, at the most 70 miles per hour before weakening at landfall here overnight tonight. Here's a look at the upper level pattern, and this shows that the trough here off to the north and west is making progress. It is a rare cold front coming down into the Tennessee Valley for the weekend. Enjoy it. That will only get to a certain threshold where it stalls, but it is going to pick up our system Debby and turn it off to the northeast. The area of high pressure here that is been blocking the system from leaving to the northeast is finally going to give a little bit here as our ridge of high pressure spins it, weakens, and the trough kicks the system off to the north and east like you would expect. And you can see that on the NAM model here that the system is going to linger and spin near the coastline until about 2 in the morning. And then it makes progress into the PD River area tomorrow afternoon. And then moving up very close to the Charlotte area tomorrow night, spreading northward towards the Piedmont Triad overnight tomorrow night, and then drying out some on Friday in the Carolinas and on south, with all the heavy rain spreading up into the Virginias, into Pennsylvania in the afternoon, and into New England tomorrow night. But not expected to go back over water and make a third landfall. Fortunately, it will be on the move. You can see wind gust forecasts here. They are strongest across eastern South Carolina and along the beaches. Generally speaking, wind gusts of 50 to 60 miles per hour can be expected. That can cause some power outages and some light damage with it, but we're not talking a major storm. We could see some elevations that have some higher winds as well here tomorrow night, mainly north of places like Mount Airy, maybe over towards Mount Rogers, and also between Roanoke and Lynchburg in Virginia and into the mountains there. But not a huge wind maker. Power outages will be possible, but we're not looking at something like Beryl in Houston. I don't think it's going to be that bad. Rain totals are going to climb pretty quickly, though, as this system starts seeing a regeneration of its core. We're going to see more rain where the storm is tracking, and then that shifts north and west. So big time totals coming to the Carolinas here, with the potential for more than 8 additional inches in some parts of North Carolina. You can see that more closely here. The Raleigh area and even Charlotte now, we have to be concerned with flooding. In general, 5 to 7 inches of additional rain, most of that coming tonight into tomorrow and tomorrow night, with some improvement coming on Friday. Looking farther north, we will also see heavy rain across Virginia, potentially 8 to 9 inches along the ridge line here of the Blue Ridge. So definitely those areas we need to be watching for some flooding, parts of West Virginia as well, and then heading up into Western Maryland and into Pennsylvania. The worst of this rain is going to be coming later tomorrow night and into Friday, and should be exiting the area on Saturday. A little bit later for the Northeast, we see a little bit of rain out ahead of this system with our boundary still in the area, but then Friday, the rain really comes down hard, and flash flooding will be a concern for parts of the North Country here Friday night into Saturday morning. Finally, looking at New England and the Maritimes here, not as much for the coast. Boston seeing lighter amounts than what was originally expected. The St. Lawrence is where the heavy rain is, with the potential to see 4 or 5, maybe 6 inches of rain through early next week. Now, the other thing I'm concerned about is the tornado threat. And with this dry air wrapping in here, you kind of see this conveyor belt like this. That would be something you would be concerned with, seeing kind of a non-tropical cyclone moving through the northern United States. You see kind of that dry air circulating. This is going to allow for more lower-topped supercell type systems to form in the right front quadrant here. And we definitely need to keep an eye on it. I've seen some tornado warnings already today. In fact, earlier we had some north of Wilmington. But you can see here on this radar, we do have these kind of cellular bands to keep an eye on here. And with a little bit of dry air aloft, this could kind of enhance the potential to see a few more tornadoes as we get into the next couple of days here, mainly in the eastern Carolinas. And as we move this along in time, this is just one model run. You can kind of see that dry air sneaking in here tomorrow morning. Take a look at what can be kind of some individual cells in here, kind of lined up in kind of a training fashion. So we have kind of some cells to keep an eye on here. I don't know why I said kind of. They are there. I'll learn to speak, I promise. And then you can see here tomorrow night and into Friday, we see another feed of these types of cells coming into eastern North Carolina and into eastern Virginia. So this area in here is just going to have nasty, cold, not cold, but cool, wet, just overcast conditions for a couple of days. But we'll see peaks of sun farther east, and that adds some instability and gives us this potential here for a few tornadoes moving into the area later tomorrow night and even continuing into the day on Friday. You can see that here with our radar. You see kind of these bands of showers and storms. You kind of see them lining up in here. There it is. I said kind of. You can see them. I'm going to laugh at myself because I just sound like I'm bumbling on here. But yeah, definitely the potential here that we have to keep an eye on scattered showers and storms with somewhat of a low to moderate tornado risk here. If you look at the tornado parameters, they're not great, but they are climbing here later tonight in the eastern Carolinas. And during the day tomorrow, we see this actually surging northward into southeastern Virginia. Not yet getting to Hampton Roads area just yet, but tomorrow night and early on Friday, that potential is there. Maybe a better chance more towards Richmond and New Kent and Dinwiddie and these areas here as we get to tomorrow night. So make sure you've got a way to get watches and warnings at night, because we could see a few tornado warnings. Here's the rest of the tropics, and I teased about the next system. I will say that this one here doesn't really look great. It's going to interact with Central America, and then it might survive and move into this area. There's a little wave behind it that has a little bit better chance to sneak into the Gulf in this direction, but right now it doesn't look super concerning to me. We're just going to have to watch it. The rest of the Central Atlantic is not looking super active, but the Eastern Atlantic is something that we do need to keep an eye on. We're heading into a more favorable Madden-Julian oscillation phase as this wave moves off and takes about 5 days to traverse the Atlantic Ocean. Then we do see around this time next week some potential for development. And if you look at the European ensemble, you can see here next Tuesday and Wednesday a feature that we'll have to keep an eye on in the Caribbean, maybe one coming out of the Cape Verdes behind it. And then obviously we get into more model spread. But I will say this, and I'll show you the ensembles here. The area of high pressure in the Azores, that's up in here, is expected to grow more to the south and west. And as it does that, that increases the risk of something making it towards the Caribbean. This would be next Tuesday. And then you see some divergence in models, but you have some opportunity for this to try to affect Cuba and maybe aim towards Florida and the Bahamas. You have just as many models, though, that develop it and make the right turn and have this going back out to sea. So a little too early to make any kind of bold predictions just yet. But as we saw with Beryl, and as we saw just now with Debby, when we look at these ensembles 7 to 8 days out, in many cases, this high pressure system has ended up being a little bit stronger and forcing everything to shift more to the west and south. And anytime you bring the islands of Hispaniola into play and Cuba into play, you will get some uncertainty in where this ends up going. So right now, we just need to keep an eye on it. Looking at the GFS ensembles, we don't have as much support as the European, which we didn't with the last one. We didn't with Beryl either. So we will probably see these trending in the direction of having development here by the middle of next week. And I will play this out a little bit. And again, don't get too carried away with any one solution. Yes, there's one going into Florida, but there are several that are recurving. We even have something maybe trying to track towards the Gulf. And then here comes the next one leaving Africa at the end of next week. All right, well, I appreciate y'all's time today. Thank you so much. I hope everybody takes the flood watch as a warning seriously. I am glad that the low country kind of avoided what could have been really catastrophic. It's still bad, but not as bad as what it ended up being. And I got that part wrong. I think a lot of us did, and I will admit that. I'll also admit that we just can't control what is going to happen in an uncertain situation like this. We just have to prepare for the worst at this point and hope for the best. If you're in Charlotte, if you're in Myrtle Beach, if you're in Raleigh, if you're in the Triad, if you're in Roanoke, Lynchburg, you definitely should take the storm seriously because most of the deaths from these kind of storms comes from inland freshwater flooding. Once we get some more rivers involved here, we definitely need to be more concerned with that threat. So I thank you for your time. I give all the honor and all the glory to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. I thank God every day for giving me a spirit of being able to serve you all and having something to follow and something that's just more important that drives me to do what I do every day. This is my calling. This is my passion. But I can't do it without God and the sacrifice that's been made for those of us who have chosen to follow Jesus Christ. Matthew 20:18, and Jesus came and spake unto them, saying, all power is given unto me in heaven and in earth. Go ye therefore and teach all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Ghost, teaching them to observe all things whatsoever I have commanded you. And lo, I am with you always, even unto the end of the world. Amen. And that is the Great Commission for believers to not be ashamed, to reach out to other folks, and to use the same power given to us to spread the good word amongst others. That is the good news. That is the gospel. That is the good word. And I wanted to share that with you today. Hope you all have a wonderful day. Catch up with you again tomorrow afternoon. See ya.